Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is insure. Now, if you're a regular watcher of my verb of the day videos, you might be thinking, wait, Katie, wasn't insure yesterday's verb of the day? And you would be right, it sounds the same, but there's one small difference. Today's verb starts with an E. Yesterday's verb started with an I, and if you stay tuned until the end of the video, we'll talk a little bit about those differences. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the ways that we use the verb insure, spelled with an E. So the first way you might hear insure used is to mean to make certain that something will occur or something will happen. Okay, let's look at the second definition here again. To make certain of obtaining or providing something. And then our third definition, to make sure that a problem will not occur. So this verb, I hope you're seeing kind of a pattern here, make certain, make sure. It's a bit like promising, guaranteeing, either that something will happen or something bad won't happen, or that we will be able to get some object, something. You should know that insure is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, all we're going to do is drop the E and then add ing to spell insuring. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to be made by adding the letter D, since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, insure, ends in a voiced R sound. So our past tense ending is just going to make a D sound. Insured, insured. Notice I'm not adding an extra syllable. I'm not saying id, I'm just saying the D sound, insured. Okay. Now, you might be relieved to know we don't have any phrasal verbs to learn or to practice. This is going to allow us to focus on some verb tense practice. And all this week, we've been looking at the differences between active and passive voice. Let's start with just a little review here. Most of the example sentences I give in these videos are in the active voice. So I start with the subject, the person or the thing that is responsible for the action. Here's a couple examples. John washed the dishes. Susan cooked dinner. Okay. So in these two sentences, I know who is responsible for the action. John is responsible for washing. Susan is responsible for cooking. Now, you may, as you're reading or talking with others, you might hear some sentences where the writer or the speaker begins the sentence with the person or the thing that is acted on or that receives the action. Okay? We call this the object. We might not know who is responsible for the action, for the doing of the action. But sometimes we will know, and we'll know that because at the end of the sentence, you're going to see the preposition by and then a name of a person or thing. Again, whom or whatever is responsible for the action. So I can take my first two examples and I can change them into passive voice. I could say, the dishes were washed, or the dishes were washed by John. Could also say, dinner was cooked, or dinner was cooked by Susan. There are a lot of reasons people might use passive voice. Sometimes others think it sounds a bit more distinguished. It is a little more complex to make, so we have to know our participles, and we'll talk about our structure here in the simple past tense in just a moment. But sometimes people use it when they don't know who is responsible, so they don't know what to start their sentence with, and maybe they don't want to say someone or somebody. Or another reason is they really want their reader or their listener to focus on that object, the person or thing that is acted on. So they might begin it for that reason. And another reason some people use passive voice is to avoid blame. So instead of saying this person did this bad thing, right? They can just say this bad thing sort of happened or occurred, or this bad action took place. Okay, so now let's look at using our verb of the day, insure. And again, our focus is going to be on the simple past tense. We're going to make sentences in the active voice and the passive voice. Let's start with affirmative sentences. Okay? In the affirmative, in active voice, our structure is going to be a subject and then the ed form of the verb if it's a regular verb, and insure is. Okay? Let's look at an example here. When they signed their lease, the former property manager insured them that the rent would never increase more than $25 per year. Okay, so we're trying to make certain here that they're not signing up to live in a place where the rent is going to increase a lot. Now, in the passive voice, okay, we're going to talk about who received the action. So these two people, maybe they're roommates, maybe they're a couple, we don't know, and that's okay. But they're the ones receiving this feeling of making certain of something, okay? So our structure here, we'll start with them. Then we're going to use the past form of be. So that's was or were, depending on our subject. And then we use the participle form of the verb. Here's the sentence. When they signed their lease, they were insured that rent would never increase more than $25 per year. Okay. I borrowed this sentence from a report. This is now sort of turned into a legal matter in a particular city, and this helped describe what happened. Now let's look at making negative simple past tense sentences. First, in the active voice, our structure is our subject. Then we use did, not, and then the base verb. So no ed here in the negative. Here's our example. The unemployment agency didn't insure background checks for over 5,000 staff members. Okay. Now, in the passive voice, okay, what received the action or here didn't receive the action are the background checks. So we start our sentence with that. So background checks for over 5,000 staff members. And then we use past tense form of be, not, and then the participle form of the verb. So background checks for over 5,000 staff members weren't insured. Finally, our yes or no questions. To do this in the active voice, we start with did, then we have our subject, and then the base verb. I always like to point out to students, notice we're only using that ed form in the affirmative, in the simple past tense, active voice, okay? Here's our example. Did the new player ensure success for the team? Okay? So again, think of that kind of like a guarantee. Now, in passive voice, our structure is going to be to start with was or were, whichever form matches the object that comes next, and then we use the participle form of the verb. Was success insured with the addition of the new player? Okay. So all of my examples here in active and passive voice have the same meaning. They're just different ways that you might hear this information sort of shared, or communicated. Okay? Now, I normally end our videos by looking at some words that are related to our verb, but I thought it might be better for us today to talk about some words that get confused. And I want you to know these words get confused by people who have been speaking English their entire life. I've probably misused one as I've been trying to write or communicate a little bit quickly. So what I want us to look at are three verbs, okay? Our first is our verb of the day, insure, with an E, right? Our second one is the verb insure. That's yesterday's video. I'll make sure to put a link in the comments in case you want to see that one. So that's with an I. And then the last verb I want us to look at is assure. So this is A-S-S-U-R-E, okay? So I know in all of my videos, I tend to give you several definitions. I'm going to try and simplify things, okay? So, insure with an E, think about making certain, okay? Insure with an I, think about insurance. So this verb is all about protecting someone or something against risk by having an assurance. Okay? And then our third verb, assure, with an A, this is sort of like a promise, right? And you're trying to say something maybe very confidently so that the person you're talking to does not have any doubt, right? They don't have this feeling of like, I don't know if this is going to happen, right? So you're trying to promise and confidently say to them, right? Trust me, okay? This thing will happen, or this thing won't happen, as it might be. So I've got different examples for us to look at. An example of insure with an E would be, we must ensure that we are better prepared for future pandemics. This is a sentence I feel like I've heard politicians, doctors, other public health officials say, right? We need to make certain that we are better prepared. Okay? Insure with an I. An example of this. They must insure this event, or we could lose millions if they are forced to cancel it due to bad weather or another COVID variant. Okay, so here are some risks, right? We're planning some large outdoor event. There could be bad weather. We could have another COVID variant and then have to cancel this thing. So we need to protect against those risks. Okay, last one, assure with an A, okay? He must assure his boss that he isn't looking for a new job, okay? So he needs to talk to him, communicate with him, remove doubt for whatever reason. This manager, boss might have some particular feelings. I don't know, this employee's looking for another job, but maybe there's something this worker can say to remove that doubt or remove that feeling, okay? One last example sentence. I tried to think of a sentence where I used all three verbs or kind of forms of them. And I don't know if this makes it more confusing or not, but let's try. Okay. To explain my sentence, though, you probably need to know that I used to be a tax attorney before I became a teacher. It was a good job, a very good paying job, right? I had very happy parents. And when I told them, nope, I'm quitting that and I'm going to teach English. I'm going to work with immigrants and refugees here in the United States. They were kind of like, are you going to be able to pay for things? Can you afford to live if you make this job change? So, and my father in particular wanted to know, what was I going to do about health insurance? Very important, okay? So now with that in mind, let's look at our example. I assured my parents that I would ensure my new career would enable me to be insured, okay? So, first part here, I promised them, I said confidently, I have a plan, right? I am going to make certain that my new jobs, my new teaching career would enable me to have medical insurance, right? So I hope this helps us understand some of those commonly confused verbs. Again, I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.